Well, good afternoon and welcome to the third and final talk in our series, Voices of Legacy. My name is Cynthia Riccio, and I'm the Director of Programs and Planning at the New Haven Museum. Though Yale College did not become coeducational until 1969, the university's graduate school and many of its professional schools accepted women much earlier. A significant number of Black women, many of them from New Haven, attended Yale in those early years. During today's webinar, Jennifer Coggins will discuss the lives and careers of Black women who attended Yale through 1940 and are featured in Beinecke Library's anticipated online resource, Shining Light on Truth, Early Black Students at Yale. Coggins notes that while some of the women she will highlight, such as Helen Hagen and Shirley Graham Du Bois, are better known, many of them have not been widely recognized. Their stories offer insights into the history of New Haven and of higher education, and an opportunity to explore the impact they have had as leaders in their professional fields and communities, she says. Jennifer Coggins is the Community Engagement Archivist for the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University. In this role, she helps community members preserve personal, family, and organizational records, promotes engagement with the archival collections and practices, and supports local history work. She is one of the co-coordinators of the recent New Haven Museum exhibition, Shining Light on Truth, Early Black Students at Yale, an effort to research and share the stories of early Black students at the university. She previously served as the archivist for collection development and manuscripts and archives at Yale and as collections management and engagement archivist in the university archives at UNC Chapel Hill. She holds an MS in Library Science from UNC Chapel Hill and a BA in History from Wofford College. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. And thank you to the New Haven Museum for hosting this lunchtime webinar series and for inviting me to speak today on early Black women students at Yale. As Cynthia said, I am an archivist working in community engagement at the Beinecke Library at Yale. And for the last year and a half or so, I've been part of a team working to identify and research Black students who attended Yale from around the 1830s to the year 1940. This project grew out of research that was done by the Yale and Slavery Research Project and by library staff for the exhibit Shining Light on Truth, New Haven, Yale, and Slavery, which just ended at the New Haven Museum. As part of that exhibit, we presented brief biographies and photos, where possible, of over 200 early Black Yale students. Those biographical profiles and images will soon be available online. Many people have been involved in compiling this research over the course of this project, including the profiles I'll be sharing today. So I want to specifically acknowledge Charles Warner Jr., Hope McGrath, Mohammed Diallo, Natalie Simmel, and B. LeBoy, who have all been part of this work. And this research is incomplete and it's ongoing. Kind of necessarily so. We know that there are other Black students from this time period that we're looking at whose names we have not yet come across in our research. And students' self-identified race was rarely documented in Yale records during this period. We will be adding to and revising the biographical profiles on the website as we learn more, and we acknowledge that the information that we have will never be comprehensive. We are excited to share what we know about these early pathfinders at the university, and we hope that it will serve as a foundation for further learning. As we've shared our research for this project, some people have been surprised that there were Black women who attended Yale during this time. As Cynthia said in the introduction, women were not allowed to enroll at Yale as undergraduate students until 1969, and our project only goes up to 1940. However, women were admitted to other Yale programs much earlier. So the School of Art, the photo here is from a class in the School of Art. They were the first to admit women at Yale in 1869. The graduate school opened to women in 1892, and the School of Music was founded around the same time and was open to women from the start. And you'll see that the majority of the women I'll be profiling today were music students in the School of Music. Other schools, including the law school, drama school, divinity school, and school of medicine, opened to women over the course of the early to mid 20th century. Today, I'll be sharing profiles of 12 Black women that we've identified who attended Yale prior to 1940 or up to 1940. Many of them were lifelong New Haveners, and a number of them had family connections to the university. They were leaders and mentors, accomplished scholars and artists, and all of them have fascinating stories that shed light on life for Black women in New Haven and at Yale in the times in which they lived. I'll start with several students from the School of Music. Effie Grant Hardy was born in 1885, and she attended the Yale School of Music from 1906 to 1909. A soprano singer, she received Yale's Lockwood Scholarship, which is a scholarship for music students at Yale. She lived with her mother, Carrie Grant, who operated the Yale Employment Bureau for housekeepers. After Yale, she moved to Quindaro, Kansas, where she taught at Western University. Western University was likely the first Black university in the Western United States, and it was an institution that was renowned for its music programs. She married Arthur W. Hardy, who was then a director with the YMCA in Columbus, Ohio, and together they had 2 children. They lived in Ohio and later in New Jersey, where she continued to perform professionally and to teach music. You can find many notices of her performances in newspapers from the period. This one on the left from the Columbus, Ohio Dispatch included a photo of her. And I'll note, I'm not sure why the caption says Mary Grant. She's referred to as Effie Grant elsewhere in the notice. On the right is an undated advertisement found in W.E.B. Du Bois's papers at University of Massachusetts at Amherst. She sent it to him, I believe, for consideration for the Crisis magazine. And one of the people quoted on this advertisement is the sociologist Herbert Miller. In 1928, Miller invited Hardy and her voice students to present to his classes at The Ohio State University on the history of Black music. Effie Grant Hardy passed away in 1983 at the age of 98. Helen Hagen is a name that, especially if you are from New Haven, live in New Haven, may be a familiar name. She was born in 1891 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, but her family moved to New Haven when she was quite young. She grew up in a musical family and learned piano as a child, continuing her musical education both at home and in the New Haven public schools. She gave her first public performance at the Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church, where her family attended. Her mother was a founding member of New Haven's Women's 20th Century Club, which was founded in 1900 as part of the women's club movement promoted by Ida B. Wells. Historian Lisa Monroe has done extensive work on the history of the club using, in part, the club's minutes, which are available for research here at the Beinecke. Helen Hagen enrolled in the Yale School of Music and graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1912, and she was the first Black woman to earn a degree from Yale and the first Black graduate of the Yale School of Music. Hagen was both a talented pianist and a gifted composer. While she was a student at Yale, she performed her original work, Piano Concerto in C minor, with the New Haven Symphony Orchestra in Wolsey Hall. Some of you may have seen in 2023 when the symphony revived the concerto with pianist Michelle Kahn. And here we have a page from that concerto, which is in the collections of the music library here at Yale, as well as a program for a concert at which she performed that piece. Hagen was the first person to receive the Samuel Simon Sanford Fellowship for Foreign Study from Yale, and she went on to attend the Schola Cantorum in Paris, graduating with honors. During World War I, Hagen performed for thousands of Black soldiers in France and was the only Black woman to entertain troops overseas during the war. In addition to her performing career, Hagen supported herself by giving private music lessons and teaching at the college level. She taught other Black New Haven students who later attended Yale, including Nerissa Whittington Tyler, who I'll be talking about a little bit later. Hagan was on the music faculty at Tennessee Agricultural and Industrial State College, now Tennessee State, and she served as Dean of Music at Bishop College in Marshall, Texas. She earned a Master of Arts degree from the Teachers College at Columbia University and was a member of several professional and musical associations. She was also an organist and music leader at a number of churches, including Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church. In 1920, Hagan married another Yale alum, John Taylor Williams, who attended the Sheffield Scientific School at Yale. They later separated or divorced, and in December 1932, Hagan wrote to W.E.B. Du Bois about scholarship opportunities, writing that, quote, "After the adjustment of my marital affairs last spring, I jumped into my career in earnest, because it is my life, in spite of the fact I have had to give it up more or less during the last few years." And I'm about to show a clip of Helen Hagan that is the only known footage of her, and it's from around 1954. We'll now talk about another music student, Mamie Louise Hope. She was born in 1890 in New Haven, and she attended classes at the Yale School of Music in the 1909 to 1910 academic year, and from 1911 to 1913. And she lived on Foote Street here in New Haven. In 1914, she completed a teacher's program at the Washington Conservatory of Music in Washington, D.C., which was an independent Black music institution. According to an obituary in the New Haven Journal Courier from 1986, she, quote, "directed and organized an all-woman jazz band where she played for countless dances and fashion shows." She had a long career as a pianist and music teacher in New Haven. She served as the organist for St. Luke's Church, Community Baptist Church, and the Keys, Ammons, and Williams Funeral Home, and worked with a number of local choirs over the course of her career. Jessie Estelle Muse was born in 1886 in New York and moved to New Haven with her family when she was just 3 years old. Her father, Richard H. Muse, was a native of North Carolina, and from at least 1890 until his passing in 1911, he was employed as a janitor in New Haven. We know that for at least part of that time, he was working on the Yale campus, working for the Delta Psi Society at Yale. Her mother, Julia Pennington Gibbs, worked as a dressmaker and a corset maker. She was the daughter of Jonathan C. Gibbs, who was a prominent abolitionist and the Secretary of State in Florida during Reconstruction. And the Muse family lived at 169 Bassett Street in New Haven. Jessie Muse was a graduate of the Shelton Avenue School and New Haven High School, which is now Hillhouse High. And she entered the New Haven State Normal School, which was a predecessor of Southern Connecticut State University, in 1904 and graduated from that program in 1906. She attended the Yale School of Music from 1909 to 1913, so she would have been a contemporary of Hagan and Hope. She unfortunately passed away at just 32 years old in 1918, and based on the time that she passed away and the cause of death, we believe that she likely passed away in the 1918 flu pandemic. Jessie Muse's sister, Victoria Josephine Muse, was born in 1887 in New York, and like her sister, came with the family to New Haven at a very young age. She also attended the Yale School of Music from 1909 to 1918. She then graduated from Oberlin Conservatory in 1936 and was a voice student in Paris. She performed nationally as a lyric soprano into the 1940s. She gave private lessons in New Haven until 1919 when she relocated to Washington, D.C. Her cousin, Harriet Gibbs Marshall, was the founder and director of the Washington Conservatory of Music in D.C., where Mamie Hope had attended. Muse took over as director of Washington Conservatory when her cousin died in 1941, and she remained director or dean of the conservatory until her own passing in 1960. These are some more concert programs from the collections here at Yale from the time that the Muse sisters were here at Yale. There are many of these in the collections, but I just chose a few that include pieces that they were performing at these concerts. And I particularly chose the one in the middle because it shows Josephine Muse on the same program as Helen Hagen. So it really highlights that the Muses, Mamie Hope, Helen Hagen, all of these students were local to New Haven and at the School of Music at the same time. Nerissa Whittington Tyler was born in New Haven in 1898 to Lillian Ross Whittington and John Washington Whittington. Her father died the same year that she was born, and she and her mother lived with her grandparents, John and Mary Jackson Ross. Nerissa Whittington Tyler was a student of Helen Hagen in New Haven, and she went on to attend the Yale School of Music from 1916 to 1919. She had a long career as a music teacher and as organist for the Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church, taking over that position from Helen Hagen when she left New Haven to study music in Europe. She married Eben A. Tyler and had 3 children, Whittington Alaric Tyler, Nerissa Diana Tyler, and Abina Sims. Hubert Barnes Ross, her cousin, who also later graduated from Yale, also grew up in the Ross and Tyler households, and her cousin John McClin Ross and uncle Hubert H.W. Ross also both attended Yale. Rachel Moore Myrick was born in 1912 in Hartford. And according to the 1930 census, her father at that time was working as a janitor in an auto factory, and her mother worked for the Hartford Electric Light Company. Moore attended Hartford Public High School, graduating in 1931, and then attended the Yale School of Music. Upon her graduation in 1934, she served as organist for several AME Zion churches and worked as a private piano tutor. She served as organist for several churches in Hartford, Manchester, and Glastonbury. She also helped found the Hartford chapter of the Connecticut State Music Teachers Association and the National Guild of Piano Teachers. She died in 2013 at age 101 in Hartford. I'll now move on to several students from outside of the School of Music. Born in 1877, Viola White Goen received her bachelor's degree from Oberlin College in 1901. She studied English at the Yale Graduate School from 1902 to 1903, taking classes as a non-degree student. In 1902, she married fellow Oberlin and Yale student Edward Franklin Goen. They had 2 children, Viola Goen Palmer and Edward Harold Goen. She spent most of her adult life in New Haven, where her husband served as pastor of Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church, but she also served as acting dean of women at Fisk University in the early 1930s. This photo is from sometime in the 1940s, but I think I may have found a photo of her from closer to her time at Yale, though it isn't confirmed. This is a group photo of members of the Oberlin class of 1901, and I believe that's her in the photo, but unfortunately it was not labeled, so I don't have official confirmation of that. Her husband, Reverend Goen, and her son were also Yale alums. Reverend Goen attended around the same time that she did and received a master's degree in theology in 1904. Their son graduated from Yale College, the undergraduate program, in 1924. Attilia Cromwell was born in 1874 in Washington, D.C. After graduating from the minor normal school in DC, she began taking classes at Howard University while still working as a teacher. She later transferred to Smith College and graduated in 1900 and was the first Black graduate of Smith. She then returned to teaching, continuing her own education with classes at Columbia University and the University of Chicago. She received a master's in English from Columbia in 1910. And in 1922, at age 48, Cromwell entered a PhD program in English at Yale. In 1926, she was the first Black woman to receive a doctorate from Yale, and she became a professor of English language and literature at Minor Teachers College. Her dissertation, which was titled Thomas Heywood, Dramatist, A Study in Elizabethan Drama of Everyday Life, was published by Yale University Press 2 years later. She was an accomplished editor and author and a collaborator of W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1958, she wrote a biography of the suffragist and abolitionist Lucretia Mott, which is pictured here alongside her dissertation. Charlotte Crawford Watkins was born in New Haven in 1913 to Cedella Donaldson Crawford and George Crawford, who graduated from Yale Law School in 1903 and was a prominent attorney and civil rights activist here in New Haven. Here is her father, George Crawford, a portrait, and him at work in his law office. Like many of the women we've talked about today, her family attended Dixville Avenue Congregational Church, so she would have grown up hearing Nerissa Tyler playing the organ, would have known the Goins, would have known or known of Helen Hagen. She graduated from Wellesley College and then continued her education at Yale, completing a PhD in English in 1937. After she graduated from Yale, she taught at Dillard University, Lincoln University, and Morgan State University before she joined the Howard faculty in 1948. She remained at Howard as a scholar of 19th century British literature until her retirement 30 years later. And in 1951, while at Howard, she married the linguist, anthropologist, and fellow Howard professor Mark Hanna Watkins. Jane Matilda Bullen was the first Black woman to graduate from the Yale Law School, and she was also the first Black woman in the United States to become a judge. She was born in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1908 to Matilda Ingram Emery and the attorney Gaius C. Bullen. She graduated from Wellesley College in 1928, just a few years before Charlotte Crawford Watkins, then entered the Yale Law School, graduating in 1931. After her graduation, she worked with her father's legal practice in Poughkeepsie for a few years. And in 1933, she married fellow attorney Ralph Mizell and moved to New York City, where they practiced law together. He passed away in 1943, and Bullen later married Minister Walter Offutt Jr. In 1939, she was appointed as a judge in the family court of New York, where she served for 40 years. In that role, she was an advocate for the rights of children and for education, for civil rights, and for the racial integration of public services for children and families. The Yale Law School Association awarded her its Medal of Merit in 1994, and a portrait of her hangs in the Yale Law School. And finally, we will end with Shirley Graham Du Bois, who brings us up to the 1940s. Shirley Graham Du Bois was born in 1896, and before attending Yale, she studied at the Sorbonne in Paris and earned a BA and an MA in music from Oberlin College in Ohio. While there, she composed and wrote the libretto for the opera Tom Tom. This opera drew on West African music, which she had first encountered while she was in France, as well as drawing on jazz, blues, and European opera. She served as the director of the Black Division of the Federal Theater Project in Chicago before enrolling in the Yale Drama School in 1938. Although she didn't finish her PhD at Yale, she wrote a number of significant plays during her time here in New Haven, including It's Morning, Dust to Earth, and Elijah's Ravens, focusing largely on themes of the African American experience. In 1943, she began working for the NAACP as a field secretary, writing biographies of famous African American figures. Through W.E.B. Du Bois, she became increasingly involved in civil rights, in activism, and also joined the Communist Party. She and Du Bois married in 1951. They were harassed due to their leftist politics, and they were eventually forced out of the NAACP, and Du Bois was placed under federal investigation. In 1961, they gave up their American citizenship and moved to Ghana, where they were involved in the Pan-African movement. Following her husband's death in 1963, Shirley Graham Du Bois continued working under President Kwame Nkrumah's administration until a 1966 coup forced her into exile in Cairo. After extensive petitioning, she was able to return to the United States in the early 1970s, where she continued to write biographies and continued to work and taught at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. The profiles that I've shared today are just a few of the fascinating people that we've gotten to know through this project, and their profiles and those of over 200 more early Black Yale students will soon be available online in the coming weeks. It will be an opportunity to explore their lives, their work, and experiences further, as well as the connections that these alums had with each other and with the local community. As you can see, just from the small number of women that we have talked about today, these are not just stories of individuals and individual accomplishments and experiences, but stories of networks of people, stories of communities, and there's so much left to learn and piece together as part of that story. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I hope that this talk has introduced you to someone you didn't know about before and perhaps inspired you to research further. As I said before, this is very much ongoing work. And if you know of a Black student who attended Yale prior to 1940 and would be interested in sharing information, we would be very glad to hear from you and, of course, to share the information that we've found. And share in the process of this project. I think we will have some time for questions now.
We do.
Cynthia.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you so much. It's fascinating to learn, about all of these women. And I do want to acknowledge that today, listening, we have April Campbell, who is Effie Hardy's cousin. And also Yvonne Yancey, who is Effie's granddaughter. So they're both in here listening. And we're wondering if you can provide your email in the chat
Yes.
in case there are, more specific questions.
Absolutely, I'll do that now.
Great. Thank you so much. And I do have a few questions here. And this one is something that I was thinking about too. What was the rationale for allowing women in these specific schools but prohibiting them from others?
That's a good question. And I don't know that I can provide a complete answer, or one that is specific to Yale. But I think, it's pretty common in the history of coeducation in the United States for specific professional programs and graduate programs to open to women significantly earlier than undergraduate programs. And I think part of that has to do with undergraduate programs being in many places primarily residential, where you would be living on campus and, likely away from family, whereas the expectations for students in the professional programs was often that they would be living off campus with their families or, with, someone who would be kind of supervising them in some way, or they would be, adults that would be participating in these programs. And so it raised fewer questions of, well, where will the women live on campus? And, those kinds of things. And with attitudes at that time of, there being an expectation that women would require more supervision. I think that, that made it easier for those programs to be open to women. Also, I think historically, art programs, music programs have been seen as more appropriate for women. That those were skills that you know it was non-threatening for women to be pursuing those skills, and so it was more natural for those programs to be open to women either early on or from the beginning.
So was there anything in when you were looking at some of these women that really surprised you or sort of sparked you the most? Like what were some of the things that you found to be the most fascinating?
I mean, each person's story is so interesting, and I think tells us a little bit more about what life was like for them and for people in New Haven and on campus during the time that they lived in. So each individual story has so much to teach us. But I think one of the things that I have been really drawn to in this research is seeing just in this sort of small sample of the profiles that we've researched and compiled, you see these commonalities of, for example, among these women, many of them were associated with Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church. There are several who were connected with the Washington Conservatory of Music, several people who went to Oberlin and to Wellesley. And so you see these commonalities and can pick up on some of the networks that were at play of people potentially supporting each other. We have Narissa Whittington Tyler, who is a student of Helen Hagen's and then kind of follows in her footsteps as organist at Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church and in going to the Yale School of Music. And so looking at those connections between people, I think, has been one of the most exciting parts of this project, and getting a sense of some of the networks and communities of support that students had when they likely were not receiving that directly from the university.
Right. And one other question, you answered a little bit about this. What further work or events on Blacks at Yale, both as students and workers, are upcoming? And I know you mentioned, the exhibit that we had here that's going up, as well as the website. Anything else that people can kind of look out for?
Absolutely. So the website is set to launch in a few weeks. That will make the text of these profiles, the images that we found, searchable and easily accessible online. You'll also be able to search by things like, how many of the, I think I've forgotten the exact number we're at now, but 240 so people that are represented here, how many lived in Chicago at some point, or how many attended Howard University or were employed by Howard University. Being able to kind of surface some of those connections and networks that I was just talking about, and access this information in new ways. So obviously, I'm very excited about that. But also coming soon, there is sort of a part 2 of the exhibit that we had at the New Haven Museum. This one will be on the Yale campus in the Schwartzman Center, which is next door to the Beinecke. And that exhibit will feature students that we have researched as part of this project, as well as staff members on campus, faculty, early Black faculty at Yale, and Black families in New Haven with multiple connections to the university. And so I think, that will be, if you saw the exhibit at the New Haven Museum, or even if you didn't, this will be a great sort of part 2 to that, building on that research, building on what was presented in that exhibit, and introducing it to some new audiences as well.
Great, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing that. I know we here at the museum are for sure. So again, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you everybody for tuning in to hear this fantastic talk. For more information about events here at the New Haven Museum, you can visit our website, newhavenmuseum.org. And we will hopefully see and hear more from you, Jennifer, and we'll see many of you soon. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.